August 19, 1953, Tehran. Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mosaddegh is under house arrest. Outside, gunfire. A mob is tearing apart his home. Soldiers who were on his side just yesterday are now pointing weapons at him. He surrenders. And a few hours later, Iranian radio announces, the Shah is returning. The coup is over in 24 hours. What nobody knew then, and what the CIA concealed for exactly half a century, is that all of it was scripted in Washington and London. Every crowd, every bribed general, every newspaper headline. In 2013, the National Security Agency declassified an internal CIA document stating directly, the coup against Mossadegh was carried out under CIA direction as an act of United States government policy, not a theory, not speculation, an official document. Here's how it happened. Iran, early 1950s. The country is formally independent, but practically it isn't. Since 1913, the British Anglo-Iranian Oil Company has controlled Iranian oil. Iranians pump it, extract it, risk their lives in the wells, while the profits flow to London. The revenue split? Britain took roughly 85% of oil income. Iran got 15%. In 1951, Iran's parliament elects Mohammad Mosaddegh as prime minister. A lawyer, an aristocrat, a nationalist, a man who had spent years pursuing a single goal, returning Iran's oil to Iranians. In March 1951, Parliament votes to nationalize the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Mosaddegh signs the law. London is furious. The British impose an economic blockade, freeze Iranian assets, and begin talks with allies about joint action. Their ally, Washington, hesitates at first. Truman has a soft spot for Mossadegh, calls him that old buzzard, but sympathizes with him nonetheless, believes it's better to negotiate than to overthrow. But in January 1953, Eisenhower takes office, and everything changes. British intelligence MI6 already has a plan. They call it Operation Boot. They come to the CIA and say, we need your help. The Americans rename the operation. Now it's called Ajax. The American side is led by Kermit Roosevelt Jr., grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt. 37 years old, polished, speaks Persian, has a talent for leaving a room without anyone noticing. His mission? Enter Iran covertly, build an agent network, and destroy Mossadegh, politically, socially, reputationally, and if necessary, destabilize the country enough that the military takes power on its own. Operation budget? By various estimates, between $10 and $20 million. Most of it, cash, in suitcases, literally. First move, media. The CIA buys several Iranian newspapers or pays editors directly. They begin running stories claiming Mossadegh is a communist, that he's steering the country towards Soviet occupation, that he's an enemy of Islam. All of it lies, but repeated often enough, it starts to work. Second move, religion. Roosevelt reaches out to conservative mullahs. They're paid to preach against Mossadegh, to organize protests, to build a narrative of moral decay in power. Third move, the military. Several high-ranking officers receive envelopes, not promises, envelopes, with money. Their task, when the moment comes, don't fire on the crowd, and follow orders from a different source. But the first coup attempt fails. August 16th, 1953. Before dawn, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi signs a decree dismissing Mossadegh. The decree is passed to the military. Colonel Nasiri drives to the Prime Minister's home to arrest him. Instead, Nasiri himself is arrested. Mossadegh knew. His intelligence had uncovered the plot. Loyalists intercepted the Shah's envoy right at the gate. The Shah panics and flees the country, first to Iraq, then to Rome. He's convinced it's over. The coup has failed. He's a fugitive. Roosevelt sits in Tehran, in a safe house. London and Washington send word. The operation is called off. Come home. He refuses. This is the critical moment. Kermit Roosevelt, a CIA field officer, unilaterally decides to continue the operation against direct orders, because he believes he still has tools left to work with. And he's right. The next 72 hours are chaos, money, and manipulation in real time. August 18th, Tehran. Roosevelt activates his last reserve. Through Iranian agents, he hires men from Tehran's criminal underworld. The Shaban brothers, street fighters, thugs, men with reputations. They're paid to take to the streets and pose as supporters of the Shah. But there's a problem. Mossadegh's real supporters are on the streets too. And there are more of them. So Roosevelt deploys a psychological warfare trick. His agents organize provocations. Groups of men posing as Mossadegh supporters attack mosques, tear down religious symbols, smash shop windows. In reality, they're plants. But the image is created. By the morning of August 19th, Tehran's newspapers, the same ones purchased by the CIA, run headlines about Red Terror and Mossadegh's godless men. By 9 a.m., crowds pour into the streets. Real ones, not hired. People who had been convinced. The Prime Minister is leading the country toward communism and blasphemy. The pivotal moment arrives at noon. General Zahedi, one of the officers who received a CIA envelope, declares himself Iran's legitimate prime minister on the basis of the Shah's decree, a decree signed 3 days earlier and technically never revoked. Army units begin switching sides. One by one, tanks roll toward Mossadegh's home. In Kermit Roosevelt's memoirs, Counter-Coup, The Struggle for the Control of Iran, published in 1979, he describes this moment. By 3 in the afternoon, the outcome was clear. The streets were ours. Mossadegh remained inside the compound until late evening. His guards had dispersed. His ministers were arrested. Communications cut. At 5:45 in the morning on August 20th, he surrendered. He was taken into custody, tried by military tribunal, sentenced to 3 years in prison for treason. Then, lifetime house arrest in a village outside Tehran. He died there in 1967, never leaving the gates. The Shah flew back from Rome within 48 hours of the coup, on an American military aircraft. Numbers worth remembering. According to declassified CIA documents, approximately $100,000 was spent in just 3 days solely on paying for street demonstrations. Several hundred people died in the clashes of August 18th to 19th. Exact figures are still disputed. Estimates range from 200 to 800 casualties. General Zahedi became prime minister. The first thing he did, sign a new oil agreement. American companies received 40% of shares in the Iranian Oil Consortium. The British got another 40%. Iranians were left with 20%. Roosevelt returned to Washington. Eisenhower received him at the White House. According to Roosevelt's own account, the president told him, "I know that if I had read about this in a book, I would not have believed it was possible." Shah Pahlavi ruled Iran for another 26 years, with constant American support. SAVAK, his secret police, built with CIA assistance, became one of the most brutal intelligence services of the Cold War. Thousands arrested, torture, disappearances. In 1979, Iranians took to the streets again, but without any script from Washington this time. The Islamic Revolution swept the Shah away. Ayatollah Khomeini came to power. The American embassy was stormed. 444 days of hostages. Iranians called the United States the Great Satan, and behind that phrase was a very specific historical meaning. They remembered 1953, even as Washington pretended otherwise. In 2000, Secretary of State Madeleine Albright publicly acknowledged America's role in the coup for the first time. It was not an apology, it was a formulation. The coup was clearly an undemocratic act. It took another 13 years for the CIA to release the documents themselves. What truly strikes us about this story? Not the coup itself. History has seen plenty of coups. What strikes us is the mechanics. The fact that a few dozen people with suitcases of cash bought newspapers and a network of agents were able, in 72 hours, to destroy a democratically elected leader of an entire country. And the consequences of those 72 hours we are still living with today. Iran's nuclear program, years of confrontation with the West, Khomeini, sanctions, all of it traces its roots back to that August morning in 1953, when Kermit Roosevelt decided not to go home despite his orders. History rarely has a single cause, but sometimes it has a single turning point. The question I want to leave you with, if Operation Ajax had failed, what would today's Middle East look like? Write your version in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what you think. And in the next video, another operation, another continent, another democratically elected leader someone decided to remove. Chile, 1973, Salvador Allende. And once again, suitcases of cash, newspapers, and generals with envelopes. History repeats itself. The only question is, who's writing it this time?